Good afternoon. I'm joined today by Mark Rathore, and this is our first podcast of the year. We've got the hottest day of the year, so if I'm a little bit pinker than normal, that's due to I think we've got a record temperature today of 38.1 degrees somewhere, so it's pretty scorching. Good afternoon, Mark. How are you doing?
Afternoon, Des. Yeah, you're totally right. It's a scorcher today. So yeah, apart from being a little bit hot, uncomfortably hot, I think things are good. Things are good. Thanks.
Excellent, excellent. So tell us about yourself, Mark.
Yeah, let's. Where do we start? Well, that's a good question. Okay, I'll give you a whistle stop tour of the last 13 years, pretty much. So I I studied chemical engineering in Queen's University in Belfast. And at the end of that degree, suddenly realised I'd studied the wrong degree because I wanted to work in the car industry. So I tried to find and tried to engineer a way into that industry, and I got quite lucky, quite fortunate is the truth, because a company called Hariba, a Japanese company, made me a job offer at the end of, well, they got in touch with me at the end of 2012 and made an offer to me in March of 2013. And that job combined many aspects of what I'd studied in chemical engineering, as well as physics, pure chemistry, sales, that we'll get on to, obviously, will be the majority of the remaining call, and account management, things like that, technical prowess, having to understand product in great detail. So that really kick-started my career here in England in 2013. I'd done 5 years with Hariba, and then I was asked to come on board to a company called Catagen in 2018 and lead their head of sales push, as they wanted to grow and expand into the UK and European markets. So we done that successfully between 2018 and 2021. Time, I really had a bit of an itch I wanted to scratch around starting my own business. So I started to do some contracting work in 2021. By this point, I had properly crossed the bridge from being a technical sales engineer to a fully blown sort of commercial revenue lead type guy. So this was it was a bit of a no brainer to, I guess, start to prospect the market and talk to people I'd met along the journey of the 8 to 10 years prior, and done some sales contracting through early 2021 into early 2022. Managed to get one client, two clients. As soon as you can get two, you can get four. Suddenly got to eight. Fast forward to sort of 2024, and I decided to change the model up a little bit and evolve it. So it went from pure consultancy into coaching as well. So currently, the business is me plus a small back office. And at any one time, there can be up to three consultancy clients and somewhere between 6 to 8 coaching clients. And really, that makes for a really interesting work week for me. A couple of days a week, maybe up to 3 days a week, you're with consultancy clients. And then in and amongst that, sometimes into the late evenings or starting on early mornings, you're on coaching calls with people that you maybe see only remotely every 2 weeks. And it's a very, very good mix, a very diverse set of clients. So, and really the main topic is pipeline management, engineering sales strategy, which very quickly then goes into the nuts and bolts of how we construct sales pipelines, how we manage them, how we measure them, how we improve them. And as you can imagine, Des, I get called in mostly when things are a little bit broken or vastly broken. So it's always good
Yes.
fun patching these things back together. And sometimes you'll go in and you'll find the whole thing, even if people think it's working well, it still does need to be ripped up and dissected and rebuilt again. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Outside of that, I've got a 5-year-old son, love spending time with him. He's at a great age. So trying to keep active, doing lots of stuff with him, like to travel, like good food. I'm into my cars as well, which makes a big difference with clients because there's a lot you can relate to a lot of things, and you can build rapport and shared interest very quickly. Yeah, probably spend a little bit too much time on LinkedIn on my phone as well.
Yeah, well, I'm the same, guilty of the same crime. One of the things that made me interested in having a chat with you was the fact that your customer base is primarily an engineering SME type of customer base.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
so tell me, is there a sort of a typical client for you, and what sort of problems are they getting you to, engaging you to help them address particularly? You mentioned pipeline management,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
how does it typically start? I mean, what are the pain points they're experiencing that kind of prompt them to cross
Yeah.
the line and reach out to you?
Yeah, really, really good question. I'll give you top end, bottom end to give you a feel for the size and types of clients that I typically work with and talk to on a weekly basis from a prospecting point of view. So, a client at the minute, successful automotive, aerospace, and a few other sectors in terms of supply chain, engineering services, engineered manufacturing goods, north of 20 million a year in terms of sales revenue. And then right down at the other end of the scale, I've got a coaching client that started with me in 2024, August of 24. We've just done 2 years together. He was a one man band at the time, wanted to start his own solar, domestic and commercial solar and EV business. And we've been on a great journey with him to the point where he's no longer a one man band, he's a team of six. And that
Mm.
business is growing and thriving without the typical tools that get prescribed to a business like that, such as paid advertisement and paid leads through Facebook, Instagram, all these sort of things. We've built and conducted a strategy that allows him to propagate growth through that very organically. So you've got a big operator in the context of that coaching client that I've just described. But actually, the truth is, anywhere in between there is a sweet spot for me. So anywhere where there is I guess, a need to have a decent sales pipeline year round, be able to draw down on that, particularly where there's investors and shareholders that are expecting performance uplift, they're expecting return on monies that have went into the business. A reasonably small sales team, anywhere between two to maybe eight sales professionals with probably one sales director or one sales manager. That is the ideal place for me to be in and around and adding value. The problems that they will usually come and present are not actually the real problems. They're actually just symptoms. So what I'll hear and see and detect quite a lot is people have a feeling that we just need more leads. Like Mark, if we had 10, 20, 50 new leads a month, we would just be fine. And the truth couldn't be further from that, Des. So, the businesses that are reasonably well established, so they have half a dozen clients or they have a couple of key accounts. The lowest hanging fruit in these businesses is often, well, how are you actually managing those relationships and those ecosystems, as I call them? 9.5 times out of 10, there is no management structure, there's no proactive forward thinking, there's no strategy. So what we end up actually doing is we go from a place of, can you get me more leads? We just need more leads, to let's actually look at your entire engineering sales strategy, because it's been built from the ground up on a couple of principles, which I'm not going to say are wrong. They're just a little bit shaky. So you wouldn't want them as a foundation, if that makes sense. Yeah. A couple of
Yes.
other
And
reasons that people will reach out to me and want to have a chat is my my viewpoints on how you set up, how you run, how you conduct sales meetings is very, very different to what is sort of, let me say, expected in the UK and European engineering world. I'll give you an example really of what I'm trying to explain here. So generally, if somebody is asked to have a chat with a new prospect or have a sales call, what will happen is they'll get on that call with very little preparation, other than they'll have maybe somewhere between 15 to 30 slides about them, their business, them, their team, how good they are, how long they've existed, how many things they've done. And basically, it's what I call a show up and throw up mistake. So they'll show up
yeah,
on that call and they'll just vomit information. So this is where I believe personally I can add a lot of value to, the top, right from that top end business doing about 27 mil a year, right down to the business at the bottom that's doing about 300-400k and growing. What we do is we flip that round entirely. So I teach a framework and a methodology as to how we prepare for these calls, how we set the frame and the context. And it's using really simple tools, Des, that you will, it won't come as a surprise to you. You send an email out 48 hours before explaining how these calls generally run, what the prospect should expect, how we're going to spend the time, a draft agenda of the really critical things that we cover. And just by doing that, just by demonstrating process and structure, you actually build massive credibility even before you've gotten the call. But the most important reason to do that, and why I teach this to a lot of people, is it allows you to drive the interaction from the get-go, where you actually start to get them to talk about themselves. That's all we're really interested in. I've started to tell people over the last couple of weeks, treat sales calls as if they're not sales calls. Don't try and sell a thing. Try and collect as much useful information as you can, and only at the end of that call, when you've collected, make a decision about, yeah, is this something that I could add value to? If they paid my fee, would we be able to give them a really great return on investment? So a lot of my time with my clients is spent going through the science. I call it pipeline science, going through the science of how you do that. But then the ripple effect and the knock-on effect of doing stuff like that and going in that level of detail, structure, and process is you can then inform your engineering sales strategy with real time, real market feedback, rather than it being an assumed, a belief driven, a gut feel driven thing. And that's, I think I've been into 6 businesses over the last 2 weeks. I've been very busy on the road. The one pattern, the one trend that I keep seeing that's coming up over and over again is you've got really, really capable, technical, I would call them almost genius level people that have founded these businesses, but they're not measuring the success of their business through the lens of actually what materially moves the needle, which is revenue and invoices out. They're measuring it through things like, we had 6 conversations with prospects that felt really good. They love the technology, they love the science, they love the IP. They want to learn more. They want us to do this. They've sent us over some drawings. They measure the success of how the business is moving based on these things, rather than how much is in your pipeline, what's your conversion rate, what's your average order value. Oh, by the way, where's your next order going to come from? Sometimes they can answer that one, but then you just say, okay, where's your second, third, and fourth coming from? So I'm in there as really sort of, quite a disruptive, annoying person. But I'm doing that because I truly do believe that the lowest hanging fruit for these businesses that I've described is the accounts and the clients that they already have. That's where I tend to start a lot of the time. So it's more, come in, get us leads. I'm okay. Let's have a conversation. Tell me what you think about leads. Then once we get that out of the way, it's tell me about the clients you already have. Tell me about the last 3 months, the last 6 months. Based on what you've told me, project out the next 3 to 6 months. Can you do that? And if the answer is no, we can't do that, then it's clear where we need to start the work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, those are great points, and particularly about the approach that you've got, where you're finding people are just, as you say, vomiting up all this presentation about themselves. Are these businesses places where they've got a professional sales leadership in place, or are these businesses where it's owner managed business where the owners sort of self-taught themselves
Yeah.
selling, or is doing selling because in a way that they think selling should be done?
Yeah, it's great. Another great question. So all of the above, all of the above. So you'll have self-taught people that have been really sort of like technical gurus that have manufactured credibility in the industry through what they've delivered technically, that have ended up then doing something very commercial. But what they've not done, and again, it's not their fault. We can't. I don't come into put blame or judgment. They've not actually been trained in the side of it that really matters, which is how to do sales, how to run sales, how to lead, how to manage sales. So like just to create some context here, and it's by no means for me to show off in any way, but since 2013, through businesses that I've worked for on an employed basis and through my own business capital, I've invested north of £80,000 in my own development and training. That's training, coaching, mentoring.
Yeah.
And the guy that coached and mentored me to be where I am now, still a very good friend of mine. I'm speaking to him next Monday, actually. I wouldn't be able to do what I do unless I'd invested into that training and coaching and mentoring from somebody who knew how to do it properly. So what I always talk about, Des, is I always talk about, look, let's understand what good looks like. Can we set a standard of what good looks like? And once we set that standard, we can measure how far off that standard we might be. So if we're under it, that's fine. At least we know what the gap is to get up. If we're sometimes going above that and we're outperforming, that's brilliant. We then know that it's a structural thing around how to remain consistent. So coming back to your question, almost always the businesses that I'm involved in have not embraced culturally training and coaching of the members of their organization that are client facing.
Yeah.
They have just not went anywhere near it, and my belief is the reason that they've not done that is because they've made it work for so long by not doing it. The question is, well, why would we invest in this now? Why would we change it now?
Yes. So you're almost somewhere between a sort of fractional sales director and a business coach or sales coach then, and you'll help them put those
Yeah.
structures and processes in place so they can actually grow and develop. I mean, I've come across this quite a lot with, we have a lot of dealings with SME engineering companies, and it's quite interesting some of the takes that some of them have got about their sales and how they like to operate. Um,
Yeah.
you know, I'm canvassing companies all the time as well, and I get all sorts of interesting conversations and all sorts of interesting information from people.
Yeah.
Um, and I actually thinking back to a call I made the other day where I literally spoke to the MD, and he said customers find us, we get business on reputation. Um, and you just think, wow, they must be really, really good at what they do, but they
Yeah.
don't employ any salespeople, and yet they must be having people in that business who are speaking to customers, who are managing customers who've got inquiries,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they don't have people who have the word sales on their business card or who
Yeah.
necessarily have that as a responsibility. And yet some of these businesses do extremely well, and perhaps it comes back to the idea of, as you mentioned, that some of these people are extremely clever and they've invented some very clever stuff, and the market's buying it. But I guess the next question is, well, if you could put a professional sales operation in that business, how much more would you be producing? And I guess is
Totally.
that
Yeah.
where your sort of sweet spot is then with your potential customers?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a pertinent point. I was thinking about this yesterday. Like, how would you actually describe in layman's terms what I do? It includes all of the above: coaching, consulting, training, mentoring, market analysis, and sales strategy. Plus, also the other bits around, what are the blockers in your business that are further upstream of sales. So like what sales can often be suffering in a business because of, you know leadership or cultural issues that are further upstream of it, that are preventing change from happening, they're preventing improvement from happening, or there's a bit of a chokehold, or they're a bottleneck. So I'm constantly looking at all of these things and trying to deliver value through all of those mediums that I've just described. I will answer your question, but just one thing that is linked quite closely to what you've put forward there is, over the last week, what I've seen very, very clearly, and it could just be that I've developed a more acute awareness of it recently, or it could be that it's just bubbled more to the surface given where we are from a macroeconomic perspective. But what I'm seeing, Des, is almost all, and I've seen, as I say, I think minimum six, maybe eight businesses over the last 2 weeks, all of those that I've seen, the same pattern and the same trend is there, which is they are diagnosing the market and blaming it for current underperformance or problems commercially. But what they haven't done, and you only find this out when you go in and ask the right questions, is they haven't eliminated execution failure first. So they haven't actually earned the right to diagnose, a market that is in a dip or a lull or has, is nobody spending money. It's very easy to hide behind those excuses and those beliefs before actually eliminating your own execution failure. And through, the conversation that we're having today is great. I have many of these per week, as you can imagine. And it only takes 4 or 5 calibrated questions that I would, as I call them, to find out what the reality is. Because a lot of these businesses that say they're doing well and can present that they're doing well, you find out in a call that some of them are having to go after grants quite aggressively. Some of them are having to take out additional finance. Some of them are looking actually at redundancies within their business. So whilst it looks good and they can say it's good, when you get into the nitty gritty of, as I said earlier, what materially moves the business forward, there's sometimes lots of gaps and lots of areas that are broken. So background to your question, I always go at sales from a system and process perspective. And a lot of people don't like this. A lot of people don't like this at all because it causes a bit of a translation problem for them. So people like the idea of, yeah, we'd love a plan. Can you help us with a plan? We'd love a plan. But when you come up with a plan that actually takes them and points them back at what they've already been doing and asks them to do it in a different way to get a better result, they sort of reject that because it's not novel enough. Do you know what I mean? It's not fun, cool, novel enough. They want to go and, well, no, we want to go into a different sector. We want to go into a different marketplace. We want to go and do this, that, and the other thing. And the thought that always is at the top of my mind is, well, that's fine, but show me how you're repeatedly winning in the sectors in the industry that you currently operate. And none of them can. None of them can show me or my back office team how they're repeatedly winning. So yes, my belief is if I can go and help, 50 engineering businesses over the next 2 to 3 years to gain this level of awareness, I think there's a ton of value that they can unlock, but then they need to embrace it. Ironically, here's where I'm at, and I'm being very candid and very truthful here with you. The clients, the clients that desperately need what I do, many times they actually don't want it. It's the last thing that they want. So what I'm doing at the minute, Des, through my content, my interactions, my conversations, is I'm selling them the gap. I'm helping expose and show them a gap, and then I'm letting them sit in that, and I'm letting that gap really marinate and have an impact. The guys that really do desperately need what I want, need what I do, they oftentimes can't afford the fee because they've went beyond that point of being, beaten up or broken so badly. So one of the challenges of selling my services, my offerings is making sure that we find that gap, we bring it front and center, and instead of actually telling people, you've made a mistake, you should have done this, you should have done that, it's just you take really what I'm calling a coaching led consultancy point of view, which is, look, let's explore this together. Is there a gap here? Like, I'm hearing you say that the business is going well, but then 2 minutes later, I'm also hearing you say that, you don't have enough in your pipeline. So what's going on here? Let's apply some measurement techniques. Let's get into this. Let's expose the gap. Let's see what's in there together. And then if it makes sense for me to come into your business and help you, I'll suggest a route forward. If it doesn't make sense and you don't need what I have to offer, I'll actually tell you that. And in addition, I'll probably point you in the direction of somebody that's better suited to help you, such as maybe yourself. It could be somebody who offers the service that you offer.
I guess one of the things that must be quite painful for your customers is effectively that you're asking them to change the culture in their business, and just to do things in a very different way to how they previously thought about things and how they would instinctively do things.
Yeah.
And changing culture in a business, there's probably books and books on it out there, aren't there? And it's not an easy thing to do, and quite often the culture follows the leadership. So you're saying, well, really, the leadership's got to stay in situ, but somehow they've got to change how they're doing things,
Yeah.
and that can be quite a difficult thing to get somebody to come along with you, because that's potentially quite a painful thing, and that's got to be quite a challenging part of the role, I would imagine.
Very challenging, very, very challenging. What we come up against almost daily is just very, very deeply ingrained beliefs. Those beliefs then propagate out through a business and create what you've rightly said is the culture. Trying to change that culture can be done, absolutely can be done, but it's a big undertaking, significant undertaking, and that's what I alluded to earlier when I talked about things that were upstream of sales. So yeah, completely on the money. It's a challenge, but again, the way I deliver my services is, I can chip away at that from what I call different attack vectors. So you can come at that
Yeah.
from a pure consultancy angle. You can come at it from a coaching angle when you're spending time with the sales engineers, with the project managers, with the guys individually. You can ask them questions. You can help them start to see things differently. And then from a training perspective as well, when you get in front of a whiteboard and help them see things differently, this all chips away and it all compounds over time. The thing that really I try to help people and businesses as identities do differently, Des, is really the commercial reasoning piece. I try to teach them and help them to see things through the lens that I've been lucky enough to develop and acquire over the last sort of decade or so through the mentoring and coaching that I've got. And quite often people will turn around and say, well, that's really obvious now that you've said that, or that makes a lot of sense. I don't know why I didn't think of that before. But like if I was to rewind the clocks a decade ago, I was in exactly the same position as them. And hence it brings us back to a point we made earlier. Culturally, if people invest, if businesses invest in their people and their development, you can quite often get ahead of challenges and problems like this just from having a culture of, look, we embrace people, we invest in skill sets. But yeah, you're right, it is a challenge.
So how do people get in touch with you if they're interested in using your services?
Yeah, really easy. You'll find me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to get in touch, and probably the only way to get in touch as well, Des, because I'll say something even more controversial now, and this is out to all of the consultants and coaches. My belief is that you don't need a website in order to sell your services. So I've recently taken mine down, and you know why? Because over the last 6 years of having one, how many clients do you think I got through my website?
I'm guessing none.
Oh, there you go. You're right.
Is
You're
it?
bang on
Yeah,
there.
there you
Yeah.
go.
So why have a website
Yeah,
when it plays no role in the sales process to onboard clients?
yeah. It's difficult to justify it if
Yeah.
that's the outcome, I guess.
Yeah. No, I mean
Yeah.
that
Okay.
that might
Perfect.
rub some people up the wrong way, but look, it is what it is. I've continued to not invest in my website because I'd rather invest in making content and using LinkedIn and actually being out and about talking to people and having a digital back office team as well. That's where I can deploy capital and get bigger returns.
Yeah. I think that our websites, they're of limited use now, and I think that LinkedIn's become a much stronger, more useful tool for communications, because it's an interactive tool, isn't it? Unlike a website, which is it's almost like a poster in some ways, that there's no real interaction. Whereas with a LinkedIn profile, there's a to and fro you can do. You can have a conversation, even if it's just a messaging type of conversation. So I think perhaps some of those some websites might be rather redundant going forward. Sounds like yours is already.
Mine had been
So
redundant for a
you're
while.
ahead of the curve
Yeah.
there. Yeah, good. Well, Mark, thank you very much for taking the time to meet us. I'm hoping that some of our audience will pick up and make communications with you through LinkedIn. And thanks for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Des. Wishing you all the best for the future interviews and also with your business as well. You're addressing what I believe is a big gap in the market, a big problem. So keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Mark. Nice to meet you.